Okay, so Yud Ches Amud Aleph, the bees and the mustard seeds. So we start off Tashema Marchikin is a Marsha min Ayarik. So a Marsha is a pool. You dig a big pit, and you soak flax in this pit. So this water is disgusting. And you dig a big pit, and you have this disgusting water. So that water will ruin your vegetables. So you have to distance the mashra from the yerek. Second case, hakarishim min habitzalim. The karishim are leeks. There's different things you can say what the karishim are. Leeks is the easiest. Karti says Rashi. So whatever you eat for karti on Rosh Hashanah, then you have to distance those from the bitzalim. The Mishnah, so Maim Sheshorim Boes Apishtan, so you soak the flax in that water. Miniyarak Shel Mini Machel Karov Veshuman Vekarishin. So basically any type of food, because this disgusting water is going to ruin the food. The karti is going to have a problem with the batzal. I believe, I'm not so sure what the issue is here, but I believe it maybe takes the pungency out of the batzal, so your onions are pretty plain. But the Khardal mina devoirim, and the mustard you have to take away from the bees. Rashi she'oichlin is a Khardal says that the bees eat the mustard umachadet es pihem, and then they get hot. It's like Sephardi bees. They get all hot when they eat the Khardal. So they seem to cool down with the sweetness of the devash, of the honey. They like eat their own honey. So according to Rashi, seems to be that you're causing the bees to consume their own honey, so therefore you're damaging the guy's honey because they're just eating the honey. Now Rashi is saying that like it's mechadas es pihem, they're spicing up the bees themselves. I would have thought maybe it gives like a spicy taste into the honey, because I would have thought maybe they take the pollen from the mustard, and then it makes the honey spicy. We can see later why that's not really happening. But Chel says a devash, so they consume their own honey. It's not they're not making bad honey. They're just eating their own honey. So therefore, the owner of the honey has less stuff. Now, when we start the first case here, the mashra damages the yerek, and the yerek is not damaging the mashra. So again, the mashra is just a pool of disgusting water. So planting vegetables nearby is not going to make that water any better or worse, and you don't care how bad the water is. That water is there to soak flax, and the yerek does nothing to it. So it's one-way mazik. The mashra is damaging the yerek. Therefore, you have to distance the mashra. And the karishin mina betzalin. Then you distance the leeks from the batzal. So again, here, seemingly, the kerej, the karashin, the leeks are damaging the onions are not damaging the leeks. So the mustard's damaging the bees, and the bees are not damaging the mustard. So the way that Rashi explains it here is that the Khardal is damaging the bees, i.e. the bee owner. It gets less honey, and it doesn't seem to care, even though they're eating the Khardal. It's not really an issue, which we'll see later. So this is a classic, question on Rava. So Taimadik Yerek, Halek Yerek Samach. So if there's no vegetable, so the Mishra, even though the Mishra damages the Yerek, if there is no Yerek there already, therefore I have a heter to be Samach. So it's a kasha on Rava. Vaha Kamash Mala. So the answer, Lo, Kileke Yerek Nami Lo Samach. Vaha Kamash Mala and Dahani Kashu Adadi. So the Bryce is just teaching that the Mishra is bad for the Yerek, so don't put it close. Maybe Rashi had a different girsa. He didn't have these words in it. So that's true that you don't have to be somach. So if that's true, that it's also to be somach. It's just we're teaching that these are somach. Even if it's not there, you're not allowed to do it. Look at the Seifa. Rabbi Yossi is matir b'chardal. So Rabbi Yossi allows the Khardal to be close to the bees. Again, here it's ve'eta chardal mina devoirim. Therefore, the bees are there first. Since the bees are there first, you have to distance the chardal from the bees. The bees are there, and you have to distance your mustard. Says Rabbi Yossi, matir b'chardal, that the mustard can go right up, even though the bees are there on the meitzar. You can put your mustard right up to the meitzar. So here in the Rambam, or sheneta chardal b'tzad kaveres devarim. So he posks that basically you don't have to distance because the bees eat the leaves and they destroy the honey, their own honey. All that, you don't need to be marchik. The thing is here, oshenata chardal. Now, when he's planting the chardal, what's he planting? So if it's a seed, so then it should be oshe zera chardal or nizra, whatever there's two terminologies here. The zera is to plant the seed, and neta is like when you have a tree. So seemingly, seemingly he's already got. Somehow he's like grown. He's gone to the garden shop, and he has already like plants of mustard. And then he plants the little mustards already in flowers. Seemingly just from if you want to be medaic in this word in Rashi, nata, because nata like planting the tree. So you're actually planting the mustard flowers already. You're not planting the seeds, because really the seeds are going to be a groma too far. Again, we're here with Rebbe Yossi with Giri Delay, so he's matir b'chardal mipnei sheyochol omer achata omer li charchek chardelech mina devoiri. So you're going to say to me, distance your mustard from my bees. Harchek devorech mina chardelai. You distance your bees from my chardal. So the whole thing of distancing the chardal, if it's seeds, it's like it's just a groma gomor. So at least there's more things. It's more direct if you actually plant the mustard flowers. So your bees come and they eat my Khardel flowers. Now there's two ways to kind of see what's going on here. Either everyone's agreeing at this stage that the bees, the mustard's damaging the bees or the bee owner, because the mustard is damaging the devash, is damaging the honey. So here, Rabbi Yossi for sure is saying that the bees are damaging the mustard as well, because they're eating. Because your bees come and they eat my mustard. So the Rashi here, mazik laharchik atzmo harchik kata. So and the mazik has to be marchik. So marchik your bees from the chardal shafata nikrama. You're also called a mazik. So now comes the start of the problems. And if there's no samech, so therefore how can you have that the bees and the honey are on top of each other? Inish, ivlo samech inish hezek lemeitzer chavero filu b'poin sham davar hanizek. Even when the davar nizek comes there, he said Rabbi Yossi de elu. So Rashi here is clearly saying this is a kasha on Rabbi Yossi. So in the Rishonim, say it's a kasha only in the Rabbanan, it's kasha on both. Here Rashi is saying it's a kasha on Rabbi Yossi. The elu shneihem mazikin hen, because they both mazik each other. So again, Rav Shita is talking about digging a bore. You dig a bore, you're mazik your friend, and therefore he says you can't be soimech when everyone's maziking each other. If you're planting the yerek, so in the Gemara, it's all good because the Mishra, so the yerek came first. And therefore, the yerek is not damaging the mishra. Therefore, you're allowed to put the yerek on the border because it's not doing any damage. The betzalim is not doing any damage, and the devoirim, the bees aren't doing damage. So you could put it there. But Rabbi Yossi says they are doing damage. Since they're doing damage, how are they allowed to be on the meitzer? So we're going to continue here with the Gemara and Rashi. Amar Rav Papa belokeach. B'lokeach acher she'asa zeh mishra b'toch sedehu or zeresh sham chardal makar machzah sedehu. So after the guy did the mishra, or he planted the chardal, then he sold half of his field to somebody else, and then the buyer planted there the yerek or hamid devorim, or he put the So Rashi here sees Zeresham Chardal. He's with the Zera. So then the other guy came with the Devorim. Now, after reading the Tosfos, this Rashi is a bit easier to read and understand. But we'll just paint the main points here, is that the Iker of Lokeach is that the Mishra came first. Acher Sha'amad Zeh Mishra, the Mishra came first. And then the Chardal came first. Because we're saying that the bees were there and then the Chardal came first. The Lokeach Zerem Yarak Orem did Devorim. So if the Lokeach in my time at the Rabban, why the Rabbanim Osering? The odd my time into Rabbi Yossi. Also Rabbi Yossi, Afilu Mishra v'Yerak Nami. So in the Gemara at the end here, it's that we have the three cases, and Rabbi Yossi says, say for Rabbi Yossi matir b'chardal. He only matires b'chardal. He doesn't matir with the first two cases. So if it's a case of where the mazik came first, why is Rabbi Yossi allowing the first two cases to be soymech? We were saying before that they're not a mazik, and now we're saying the mazik comes first. So therefore, what's Rabbi Yossi? Filo mishra v'yarak nami amar ravina kasavi rabbanan ala mazik laharchek atatzmo. So, my time lo pligi li b'charda v'tama mishum de travaihu mazikin hem. Even though that he did it berushus, that these, so Rava's is saying that the mazik has to be morachik. So even though that he did it berushus, and therefore he had a heter to go onto the border, even though when he was there beheter, he had to move it later. So then why is Rabbi Yossi arguing Mechlad Rabbi Yossi Sover al hanizak l'harkik atatzmo ila nizak efilu mashra v'yarak nami? So therefore the mishra v'yarak he should also have to be marchik. Ela la'olam Rabbi Yossi ala mazik svar alei v'hachikam arlahu Rabbi Yossi l'rabanan. This is what Rabbi Yossi is saying. Tinach mishra v'yarka dahani mazik hani v'hani lo mazik hani. So here we're having now a chiluk in Rabbi Yossi that he says the first two cases is one-way mazik. So then the last case is, since there's two-way mazik, therefore he has a different din. For Rabbanan Devarim Lachardal lo maskile, but they say they don't. If it's with the seed, they can't find it. The seed is like stuck inside the flower. They have problems getting to the seed. If it's because of the flower, harder puri. So they eat the flower and it comes back. So now we have the problem we had before for Vesver Rabbi Yossi ala mazik l'harkik. We know that Rabbi Yossi holds. We've seen this again later. That's a non Rabbi Yossi number for pisha habor kodemas le'ilan lo yikot shezechor v'tok shelo v'zeh not v'tok shelo ele le'olam sorry ala nizek svarlei le'devreihin le'dram kamer lehu dididi ala nizek l'harkik atatzmo ve'filu mishra v'yarka lo boy rechuke. So it's on the nizek l'harkik, and therefore since the mishra and the yarek are the so even though he holds that the mazik, he holds the mazik doesn't have to be marchik. Therefore, the mishra and the karshim don't need to be rochuk. Eila for you, and you say that the mazik. So it's okay that the mishra and the yarka, because they it's a one-way mazik, and they don't mazik the other. Although the chardal and the voirim, according to you, both of them mazik each other. And the Rabbanan say no, the Rabbanan l'chor no mazikle. If it's the seed, then they can't find it. And if it's the leaf, then it grows back. So the Mashal ha-devora, the bee can't find it. Lefisha hu tamun b'shortvo. So that inside the stick, the flower of the mustard, he can't find it. Stuck inside the shtarvo is the stalk that comes up. V'betreifa v'im yachol ha'ala, that's the flower part, chazer v'tomei chazer pri, it's going to grow back. Now that's the Gemara, and again it's kind of unclear what exactly the Shakla V'Tari is. So Maharam says Shemaita da katzir bar Rashi devarav. So here the Maharam says it's hard to understand what's going on because Rashi is mekatzir himself. V'ein la shom chibor ki im al derech shapir shetois v'shitas Rashi. So you can only understand it, you're going to have a chibur to what's going on the way that Tosfos understands Rashi. So you can go. There's quite a long Maharam there, and you can see again a lot of the pshat of Toisus in the Maharam. So with the Toisus, go look at the Maharam. Now, if we start here in the here, you see this Gimel going on to the third Toisus. The Gimel says Acher Divrei Hamaskel ve'i law. So that's e law here. So that's the first one. Tzarech loymor Divrei Hamaskel v'savar. So v'savar is down here. And it says la'ayel for some reason there, which is higher up. So this is number 2. This is the second toisus. That's the first toisus. Ve'achar kach divrei maskel מכלל, which is this. So this is the third toisus. V'chule v'gimel devorim elu. I think hechit divrei mechad. That's all one. Ve'achar kach tzarech loymor divrei has leglugay. So this one, leglugay, is the last toisvus. The first it's the ve'i, and then it's v'savar, and then here in toisvus here in the third one, tzarech loymor lepir zeh. That's talking about the end of the toisvus here. So basically, this has to come after v'savar, and this continues basically what he's saying ve'i. So we're going to start with ve'i and the toisvus, and off we go. Ve'i lo samech. So again, we have it up here. Which we said in Rashi is a kasha on Rabbi Yossi. So perish ri bishlema d'Abaye d'Amar Samach ati Shapir. So our first goal here is to see why it's good for Abaye. Now Tosfos is saying that it's a kasha on Rava according to. Now again, if you put Tosfos and Rashi together, then it's a kasha on Rav according to Rabbi Yossi. And again, but Rashi does say it because Heichi Meshachik La Lismoch. That's the kasha on Rava. He doesn't use the name Rava here. But when he says kasha Lismoch, he knows the kasha on Rava. So he's saying it's Bishlamel La'abayin. It's important to understand that their whole case in the previous step is Bishlamel La'abayin. We're going to see later on in the next tosis why we have to be clear on why it's Bishlamel La'abayin. Demairi Shesamech Bal Hadavairim Techila. Because the bees came first. And again, so now, since the bees came first, again, we have Abaye, we need to understand why the Rabbanan are good, and we have to understand why Rabbi Yossi is good. So now we're holding that everybody holds, it's a two-way hezek. So that's at this stage of this Gemara of Eid de lo Samach, it's a two-way hezek, everyone's holding that. So even though we're holding that, everyone's holding to two-way mazik. So that basically, even if I'm a mazik, I have this heter to be soimech. I can be soimech. I have a mazik. I can become all the way up to my born. I can dig it, and then we saw that in Abaye. So Abaye again in the Rabbanan. Stel de shons Abaye damar samoch imba ach achet. So Baye is holding in the Rabbanan that you can dig a bore that's a mazik all the way and you can be somek because there's no bore on the other side. And then the bala bore comes, the second mover has to take all the harchaka onto himself. So therefore here, the mazik hasheni Hainu bala chardal laharchik et kol et atzmo is the aleph here kol harchaka kamo gave bor. As we've seen this already, so that's a baye in the Rabbanan mamish klor de'im samacharishon ala meitzer hasheni marchik kol shisha tefachim. So that's good, a baye according to the Rabbanan. But seemingly what we have so far, Rabbi Yossi doesn't make so much sense. For Rabbi Yossi Savar kaven to devoirim maske chardal. So now Rabbi Yossi is saying that when I put the bees onto the border, I know, and again I seem to have this knowledge that the guy's going to put his chardal there. That seems to be like I'm expecting the chardal, just like before it was a sadeh esuya leboirus. This seems to be some sadeh esuya lechardal. And you know the guy's going to bring his chardal there. So I know he's going to do the Yasa Ketzat Shelo Kahoikin. So now this here is the Svara of Tosfos. He's going to use, he pumped it, stick it into Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi goes that the first mover was Asa Ketzat Shelo Kahoikin. because it's going to be mazik in the future. So we haven't seen this anywhere before. This Toys is putting it in here, that the first mover is asa ketzat shelo kahoigen, and therefore he gets some type of punishment later, and he's not allowed to stay there. Shesamech al ha-meitzar shezeh atid l'suf l'zera chardal. I know the guy's going to do it, so you're just being a bit of a asshole to put your chardal there first, because you know it's going to cause trouble later. Afal pi shebedin ena yachol lemanoya shelo yismoch. So again, you gotta walk this tight line here. It's mutter lismoch. Abaye mutter lismoch. Rabbanan, the second guy, does the whole harchaka. Rabbi Yossi el nizak leharchakat atzmo, but the mazik, he shouldn't have done that. So we have a whole new kind of idea here. Now this is only in Abaye, so right now it doesn't really matter so much because we don't poskim like Abaye, poskim like Rava, but maybe we'll change this later, see what's going on. But there's an important idea in Rabbi Yossi, in Abaye, that even though it's on the nizak laharchakat atzmo, if the mazik goes there first, you can't stop him going there first. However, he did a meikumakom ketzat shelo kogenasa. He did something he shouldn't have done. The gam baal chardal yachol lismoch, and also the baal chardal is able to be soimech. So the first mover is the bees. Since the first mover is the bees, and he didn't do what was so good, so too the second mover, when the mustard comes, he doesn't have to be marchik. And this is kind of the idea, just because you're going to mazik me, I can mazik you. You don't care, like you knew this was going to mazik me. You put it all the way right up against the border, so therefore I can mazik you and I can go all the way up against the border. You should have distanced yourself, and if you did distance yourself, I would distance myself, because you didn't. I didn't. And even though it's like midas chasidus for you to distance yourself, since you didn't do that, midas chasidus, then I can come all the way up. It's a little bit of a din of nakama here, that I can get nakama on you because you didn't care about me when you put your bees here. Now Toisus is stuck. He has a problem because lo dami lebor, because on the bor we don't have this whole svara. Dahasa mishum demarafir la'ara umazik hasheni b'yedayim l'kotel bor shel rishon l'kachal hashem l'chaker kol harchaka. So since bor is taka mazik b'yedayim, it's giri delay. Therefore Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi's moedeh b'giri delay, and therefore the second guy has to do the whole harchaka. But here with the devorim and the chardal, it's not giri delay, and because of that, therefore it's this shelo kahoigen ketzat shelo kahoigen, this new svara, which means that you weren't such a nice guy to go all the way up to the meitzer. Vel haka lo ela lo. So that's all the shittas in Abaye. So we're clear in Rabbi, we have Abaye in the Rabbanan, that it's the first mover gets it, even though you're the mazik, first mover gets it, no problem. Second mover has to do all the charchaka. And Rabbi Yossi, if it's giri delay, the second guy has to do all the charchaka. And if it's not giri delay, so then you shouldn't go all the way up, even though bedin you're allowed to. But if you do it, then he can come up all the way to the meitzer as well. So this is the problem. This is the kasha of the Gemara. It's all on Rava. The Baal Chardal Yarchik Kol Harchaka Rabbanan. So the Chardal comes second, and the Rabbanan say that he has to take the whole Harchaka on himself, even though they're both mazikim. That's the kasha for the Rabbanan. And the Rabbi Yossi Lo Yarchik Klal. Why does Rabbi Yossi not have any? They're right up against each other. The Kaven the Travaihu Mazki Adadi Al Kol Echad Ve'echad Laharik Chetzi Harchaka. So again, this is the chiddush. I don't know if we've seen it necessarily with Ferush, but the idea of chetzi harchaka. I mean, the 3 tefachim. I guess 6 tefachim of the bor is the whole harchaka, and you do 3 each. So that's chetzi each. So again, this kind of fits in as well. We saw this machlokes before. Is it 3 or 6? But the fact that the second bor has to do 6, according to Tosis, that's the whole harchaka. Therefore, 3 would be chetzi. So therefore, according to our kasha on Rava, is that why is each one's going right up against the border? They should do half the harchaka each because they're both maziks. And again, Rava does not allow you to be Smich. So therefore, they both should do half each. Even if the Bal Devarim went first, Yesh lesalek. He should remove them. Hoil v'shalo kedin samcham. So once you put them there, he has to move them later. You got to move them later. So that's the question. And it's not that, you can keep him there. No, you got to move him. That's the question. Now, Amar Rav Papa Belokeach is again, he's bringing the Gemara. We've moved now, Amar Rav Papa Belokeach. He's moving the Gemara, explaining the next part of the Gemara. Amar Rav Papa Belokeach, Shezera Chardal. So again, the Chardal came first. We were all saying the bees are first. The Iker teretz of Lokeach is the Mazik is first, not the Nizak. That's the Iker. We're flipping the order. That's the Iker teretz of Lokeach. The buyer then put the bees, so the bees came second. The Savri Rabbanan could the Masik. So the Rabbanan and Savri, like in the Maskana, that the Devarim lo Mazik lechardal. So when we flipped here in the Rabbanan, because he said above that we were holding at the top of the page, we were holding up here that everything Maziks each other. And now with the Rav Papa, he's also including that the Devarim don't damage the Chardal. Therefore, the Rabbanan are good in the case of Lokeach because the Mazik is always the second mover. Since the Mazik, every first mover is a Nizak, and since it's on the Mazik Laharka Getatzmo, first guy goes first, and the Mazik has to do the whole Harchaka. Easy. The Al HaMazik Laharka Getatzmo, Afal Pisha Samak Beheter. So the Mazik is always the one that comes. The Mazik was the one who always comes first. Therefore comes the Nizak, since they want to hold the Mazik, the Harchak Getatzmo, the Mazik's on the border, he has to move. Even though he comes later, he has to move. Now here Tosis answers up a question we had, I think, on the first day. So we had in the Mishnah on Chuvhei, Amud Beis, that if the tree comes first, you don't have to cut it, even though it's doing the damage. The tree is the damager on the bore. Says Tosis, why do I want to cut down the tree? And we had the question, why are you paying, even if it came second, you got to pay the mazik. Why are we paying the mazik? So the mazik here, in the case of a tree, so Tosis here is to make what's the difference between the tree and the devorim, all these type of things. So if the chardal comes first, which is the mazik, I have to move my chardal. But if I put the tree gets there first, I don't have to move my tree. Even though the tree's the mazik, the chardal's the mazik, what's the difference? So I forgot about Gava Ilan, because Shasamik Beheter, Amri Delo Yakutz. So Samik Beheter means there's no bore there already. That's the whole shita of Samik Beheter. You don't cut it. Hani Mili Ilan. That's a tree, She'oisi La'amod Shanim Rabot, Ve'ika Hesed Maruba. So Tosis is bringing two svaras here as to why a tree is different, because the tree is supposed to stay there for a long time, and therefore we don't chop it down. So the chardal will just be every season or whatever. I'm guessing the chardal is like a plant, and you every season you chop them down and replant them anew next season. But the tree you just plant it once; it's meant to be there for a long time. Therefore, you don't cut it down. And then we have the second svar, hefsed maruba. So moving the tree is a hefsed maruba, but moving the chardal, these other things, you don't get a hefsed maruba. So therefore, for a tree, you don't have to cut it down, and you also can get paid because it's like there for a long time and have some maruba. So this is for Tosis to answer up that mission over there. Why the mazik gets special treatment when it comes? It's only for a tree and not for other things because it's easy to move. About mashra, kirashin, v'chardal. So again, these are the three maziks according to the Rabbanan. These are the three maziks. They're not supposed to be there for a long time. Seemingly, you move the mishra around, so you just dig a pit and fill it with water, and off you go. And it's cheap to move it. And the leeks, again, it's a vegetable that you replant every year, cheap to move, and the chardal as well. So therefore, you're the mazik. Since they're a mazik, you have to move them. So therefore, you plant the chardal, comes the bees, you got to move your chardal, the whole harchaka. The hakinami amrin and gave ilan. In bor kodem, because we also say that even by a tree we say this, because if the bor comes first, koit says v'noitin damim. So even though just samach ilano be'isr, so you're getting the money even though you put the tree be'isr because the bor came first. So therefore that the ilan gets the money. Ubeshar devarim and ismachim be'isr Eino nira. So we have the koitzets. So that's the get rid of your Khardal. Even though the samach ilan be'isr, you get the money. So the Khardal was beheter, you gotta move it. And the tree, be'isr, you gotta move, you gotta cut it down, and you get your money back. But the other things, you don't get the money back. You don't get the money back. So Tosfos bringing out again, here is that for the tree, it's a hefsa maruba. Since it's a hefsa maruba, that's what the Rabbanim were worried about. Therefore, you get a bit of money to move to cut your tree. But you see the fact that you have to move your tree, you also have to move other things as well, like the Khardal. The Rabbi Yossi Salvar, the Devoirim Mazki Lechardal. So there Rabbi Yossi has the two-way mazik. V'tzarech Bal HaDevoirim Laharchik Kol Harchaka. And therefore, the Bal Devoirim, the Bal Devoirim, he's the second mover. He has to do the whole harchaka given the Bal Khardal Lo Asa Klal Shelo Kahoigin. He planted his Khardal in the middle of his own field. Someone else then bought the field or half the field and put his bees there. So the first guy did nothing wrong. So since the first guy did nothing wrong, therefore the second guy has to do the whole harchaka. So that's Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi according to Rava. How Rav Papa explains that it's lokeach, and he flipped the seder. Since he flipped the seder, everything works according to Rava. But Abaye would still be going according to the original seder, that the bees came first and then the Khardal. So now Tosfos goes and he says that basically it would have been better to do it the first way, but we have problems going the first way. This is how we had it originally, that the bees came first. He says he didn't want to do the bees came first. Why can't the bees come first and have a lokeach? Why is he flipping it? Again, the flipping, I don't see the flip of the order in the Gemara. It's only in the Rashi and the Tosfos, but Tosfos is going to explain, basically it doesn't work. If he did that, though, if the bees came first, he wouldn't have had to be doichek and say that the Rabbanin al hamazig laharchak afal pi she'asa beheter. So the Rabbanin have a bit of a doichek here, that I did nothing wrong, and I put my mustard seeds there. I did nothing wrong. Why do I have to move my mustard seeds? I was samach beheter. Oh, you have to do it because you're the mazik. That he says it's a doichek teretz. So if he put that the bees came first, he wouldn't have that doichek teretz, because I just have to. My mustard is distancing the full thing because I'm the mazik. Simple. But here's doichek to say the mustard come first, and then the bees come, and I have to move my mustard later. Masha eno gaba ilan. We don't have that by the ilan the boar. We don't have that just move your boar, because again, you the second mover takes all the harchaka. The gam lo yitzarech loimer, and also if I had it that way, I wouldn't have had to say the Rabbanan that the bees don't damage the Khardal, and then the pligi of Rebbe Yossi. Now here you get into what exactly are the Rabbanan arguing on Rebbe Yossi for? That according to Rav Papa, there's a maklokes that we have to flip in order to make Rava good. We've got to flip the which came first, the Khardal or the bees. And we're saying here that according to the Rabbanan, the bees don't damage the mustard. According to Rabbi Yossi, they do. So I don't like that maklokas, says Tosfos, because Lamaisa, what the hell are they arguing about? And you see that because they say, well, if it's the seeds, they don't get to the seeds, and if it's the flowers, so then the flowers grow back. So now what does Rabbi Yossi say? Yeah, but they eat the flowers. Yeah, but the Chachamim agree they eat the flowers. So they grow back. So what if they grow back? That's still called a damage. So then why do the Chachamim matter? So what exactly are the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi arguing about? And therefore, Tosfos bringing in here that's a daichek of Rav Papa in order to make this maklokas. I mean, the easiest way to say is it's a maklokas mitzias. Do bees damage the mustard? Maklokas mitzias. Now, a lot of people like to say there's no such thing as maklokas mitzias. I don't see why there can't be. You say, it can't be because they just go see. I mean, they're not scientists. They're arguing about Torah concepts that are hishtalshtel into physical objects and bees and honey. But they're discussing tremendously high spiritual things that just come down in a mundane thing. And it's like, Well, I think the wall is 5 tall, and you think it's 7 tall. We'll just go out and measure it. I'm not a builder, whatever. The reason I said it's 5 tall is got to do with the spheres or whatever. The reason you're saying it's 7 tall got to do with whatever panim of spheres. So anyway, people say you can't have a makros with sis. I don't see what the problem is. So the imkain, if the bees were first, kaven de bal devarim samach beheter. Lo asa el shelo kahoigen lo haye matir Rabbi Yossi lebal Chardal lismoch. Then we'd have the pshat that the Chardal wouldn't be able to be Saimach. So, sorry, the Imkain, if it was true, so this is why he can't put the bees first. It's that since if he came first, he didn't do anything wrong, and therefore we'd never have a Rabbi Yossi would never be matir the bala adorm lismoch. But yet we see that he does, and therefore the bees can't come first. So therefore we will never be able to find the sheet of Rabbi Yossi. Therefore we have to flip it and say that the Chardal came first. Vim taimar noki plukdaihu below lokeach. So just to do without the lokeach. The Rabbanan that the bees don't mazik the Chardal, since that's what they hold. Therefore they need the Bal Chardal to remove and to distance the whole Harchaka, even though he went first. We see that again, the mazik goes first, but the mazik has to move. Deplant his Hardal, and Rabbi Yossi came into Travaihu mazik. Since they both mazik each other, the bar Hardal doesn't have to be Harkik the whole Harchaka. Ele Chetzi. So then for Rabbi Yossi, that the Bal Chardal he should do Chetzi. But why is he Samach? Yishlamar the Matir B'Chardal, when Rabbi Yossi says he's Matir B'Chardal, which is here, the Emusefer Matir B'Chardal, Rabbi Yossi Matir B'Chardal. So Tosis is saying if without the Lokeach, he'll only have to do half the Charchaka, not all the Charchaka. So Matir B'Chardal, Mashra Matir Legamri Lismoch. So Ihachi, my time at the Rabbanan, so this is going back into the Gemara. Ihachi, my time at the Rabbanan. Ibalokeach, says the Gemara, my time at the Rabbanan. So again, we've only got like five words in so far. We're only in the second line. Okay, there. So Ihachi, my time at the Rabbanan. Tosh is going on, explaining further. Kaven de beheter nismachu, since the Mishra of a Karshinen. So lama tzarech laharchikan. So why is the mazik moving them? Kishabo yera kubitzalim when the nizak comes. So kol sheken chardal. So he's going to explain the kol sheken chardal lama yarhayhek lushabai devorim. Kevin shagam hem mazki. So again, the kol sheken the chardal were flipped again on who's damaging who. Tzakatach devorim nami mazik lachardal lecholayama. So again, here we flipped it. We flipped it again. Who's damaging who? Everyone's damaging everybody. So this is a question on the Rabbanan. Why is the Bar Chardal the Chardal moving? The Chardal shouldn't have to move because he was there first. Beheter. Why is the mazik moving? Oh, at my time at the Rabbi Yossi, the lo palagele b'Chardal. Why is he only on Chardal? Misham devorim nami maski l'Chardal. So since because they mazik each other, since the mazik was there beheter, lo yistarech lacharka kamo kavailan, then he shouldn't have to do a harchaka, just like Rabbi Yossi says by ilan ubor. So that's the kasha of the Gemara. Mishani ravina leoilam belokeach. So really, it's with the lokeach. The kasavi rabbanan ala mazik lacharka katatzmo. So ravina is staying a ravina. Amaravina Kasavi Rabbani. He doesn't say Lokeach. Tosis is going to add that in. He says that we're staying with the Lokeach, but the Rabbanin is on the Mazik Lahar Katatzmo. Afol Pisha Asa Beheter. So we kind of saw this in previous iterations of the Gemara. We had this svara. It's just we had a svara for the Rabbanin, and then we jump into Rabbi Yossi. Oh, if Rabbi Yossi holds this, the Rabbanin must hold this now. The Rabbanin don't make any sense. And now we're kind of splitting them out in the Ravina. So even though they went to Heter, Lahachi ala bala chardal laharkik, he's the mazik. Upara kevin she Sheminin mimilta de Ravina shedavrim ena mazikim lechardal delakach nisun rabbanim harchaka al bala chardal. So since always the mazik has to do it, therefore it has to be that the bees don't mazik. Mechal de Rabbi Yossi savar al hanizak lacharka eratzmo midashari smichas chardal. So since he allows the chardal, who's the mazik, since he allows the chardal there, he must hold it to the nizak to be marchik. Afal pishahu mazik, even though the chardal is a mazik, velo nizak, and he's not a nizak. Im kain if you lo mashra of yarak nami. So therefore the mashra and the yarak also should be, because they're the mazik and they should be distancing themselves. But within the havi matzi lakshu. So at this point we could have also asked the brisa behedi mashra the dvorim mazki nami lachardal. Just like we say later on, we're going to say that the bees are mazik also the chardal. The katani v'ocheles legulli chardal. They eat the prince. Eila nichel the nefnakoshia the filu mashra v'yerak nami mishum dechadil kavar lahakshota. So since this is how we started off, we're asking from this idea of Rabbi Yossi matir b'chardal and the mishra. So the mishra and the yerek. So therefore we come back, even though we had another way to attack Rabbi Yossi, we continue on with this line of attack. So then we continue with the Savar. So we continue the Savar Rabbi Yossi ala mazik. This is a continuation of the Gemara. The Kaman al Mokomo Havile La'akshue. So al Mokomo really here is referring to Chav Hey on the base, that why are we bringing up the whole business here of whether Rabbi Yossi is on the Nizak or the Mazik. We deal with this in the Gemara on Kav Hey, which we saw before. Ela mishom de itzrech lefaresh chaka, because here we have to explain to Savar Rabbi Yossi de la Mazik laharcha katatzmo. Because we have to explain here the idea that Rabbi Yossi is on the Mazik asuke lekule milta. Therefore, we put the whole thing here. So because we're saying in the Havamina here that we're saying that he's on the Mazik, therefore we bring the whole matter here. Ubelokeach. The Haka I Efshar Lefrosho Kapirush Rabbeinu Chananel. So here with the Lokeach we can't do on the Rabbeinu Chananel. And this is the Rabbeinu Chananel, which we said over here is the Perish Rabbeinu Tam, and we said, oh, that's Rabbeinu Chananel according to the Rishash. So this is what he's bringing down here. The Perish Ba'adam Shalokeach Mishra V'toinen LeLokeach. This is in the base then that who's the Lokeach? He buys the Mishra, and we tie him for the Kedim Kain Lama Yercha Kamishra because she basham Yerek. So why is he distancing the smelly pool when the vegetables come? Kevin to toinin lo shahamoicher kana smichazu. So here, basically, once he sells him this pool, the moicher sells all the zuchot that the moicher has. So when the buyer comes in place of the moicher and has all the zuchot that the moicher has. So since the moicher planted this mishra, we toin him then, just like it was mutter for the moicher to do it, therefore it's mutter for him to do it. So therefore, since he bought the field, and the moicher, when he sold the field, he's allowed to do it. So again, if you have the case of where the moicher, he has his own mishra, and he can plant his own yerek right next to his own mishra, and therefore he sells the field, and then I buy the field and I plant the yerek there. So he has all the zechut of the moicher, because the moicher owns the whole thing, and therefore he can plant it beside it. And therefore, if we toinen for the mishra, for the mazik, he can stay, and he's got no harchaka at all, because the owner doesn't have to be marchek at all. Elitzarch lefarish belokeach kamosha perish b'kuntras. That's going back to his explanation here in this Taisus Hakanami Belokeach, which he brings there. So there he says it doesn't work. O Kari Bar Mordechai, it's over there. So Kach Perish Ri Kolasuki Shit Rashi. So there we go. That is the Gemara according to Taisus, how Rashi explains it. So again, Rashi is chaser, so we got lots of twiddly bits that Taisus puts in. Things like you are Soimech. Shelo Ketzat Shelo Kahoigin. That's Rashi doesn't say that, but Tosfos is saying it's Pshat and Rashi. The Kasha law is a Kasha on the Ri on Pshat and Rashi. Ma Hutzrak Lechalek, but Doichek Ben Lokech Te'ilan Lokech the Mishra. So here, why do we have this tree? He has the tree business he asked up above. Again, the tree's allowed to stay, or you cut it down, or you get money for it. But not here. V'o dilma delama hamtin lahavi Mishnah zu de Mishra v'Yerek barachroina hamugdaktim b'mishmasenu. So when we have here, we're asking all the questions. So Marchikin es a Mishra min a Yerek. So that's coming. That Mishnah comes before this Mishnah here. Marchikin es a Ila min a bor as v'chamesha ama. This Mishnah here comes after this. So why don't we ask this? Why don't we ask this first? This came first, and then we ask from this Mishnah because we're seemingly going beseder. V'o dikatani b'tosefta Rabbi Yossi matir b'chardal. So this is Rabbi Yossi matir b'chardal. So therefore, the chardal can say, just like you did in yours, i.e., you put your bees, which are damaging in yours. Also, I will do me. Mashma that the bal davarim samach techila. Again, right, because he's matir the bar chardal to say I'm going to do what I'm going to do because you did it wrong. And also here again is mashma in the Gemara that chardal came second. It's a chardal. You have to distance the chardal from the devorim, meaning the devorim are there, and you have to distance your chardal. I mean, that's the pashtus of the Gemara. And in the Tosefta, it says kind of a ferush that the chardal kachani oseh b'tok sheli. I come second. That's what the bal devorim from techil and the chardal second. Umefarish Rabbeinu Tam v'Rabbeinu Chananel. So now we have a new pshat in the Gemara, and this changes everything. Everything up to this point is going to be flipped up to here because now, again, we have Rava and Rabbi Yossi. That's how we're posking, and we don't care about Abaye. A lot of places Rava and Abaye come together, but Rava it argues on Abaye and the Samach and Lo Samach. The Hachigarsin and Ela Amar Ravina discovery grow on al-Mazil Harkagatzmo, and we have this word Ella Amar Ravina. So here we have Amar Ravina is that he's in the pshat of Lokech, and in the pshat of the Samach. He's in that pshat. Ela Amar Ravina means that it doesn't work. We can't find pshat for Rava, and therefore because all the time, all this daf, we're asking kashas on Rava. So Marchechan it's a ilam in a bor. And he says, look, Rava has to answer all this. So we keep on asking questions. Saying here, Ella Amar Ravina means we chuck it in. We give up. Rava is defeated. Ella Amar Ravina. Every time that Rava said, Eino Somoch, we have to go back and say he's moided to Abaye. Rav is giving up. He can't defend himself in this case of lo samach. Here is clearly a case of samach. Since it's a case of samach, therefore he has to change the opusha, and Rav Taka holds just like a baye of samach. And therefore, if there's no nizak, you can go all the way up to the border. The hashtar hartabe mikol shininu de la aisle. Devadai bekuluhu moderava de kileke koisel or yerak de samach mishom de kasavi rabbanan davka la mazik la harkadatzmo. Therefore, where there is no nizak on the other side of the meitzer, you can go there and you can be mazik, you can be soimach, because there is no nizak and therefore there's no mazik. Dahayinu ike dover hanizuk. If there's something that's nizuk there, then you're a mazik. Aval ki leket davar hanizuk, but there's nothing to be nizuk. Lo mekri hasomach mazik. You're not called a mazik. V'lo aser Rava lismoch afilu le rabbanon, and therefore Rava lo. Look at these words. V'lo aser Rava lismoch. He's in with a baye. Eile davka bor mishom taima to kol maravamara, because so he's davka bor is moide because it's giri delay. It's Rabbi Yossi is moide be giri delay. The kamachis marfer la arai. So can we said? So you said Yud Zayin am a base here at the end of the Tosfos. The im tema akati my perak Rava. What's the question Rava? Ha mafarish time and la'ayo mishum dekumara mara. So we said that Rava is only moide in the case of giri delay. So again, this is also feeding into this Tosfos here of that. It's only the case. Rava is only arguing on a baye in the case of a bor, because the bor is a giri delay, but he agrees in every other case you can be soimech lahachi chashav a soimech mazik. So there the soimech is mazik, even though there's no bor there, it's a giri delay. Afilu kileke bor. There's no other boy there. Became the Rabbanan Nami Samach Atisha Pirplak Daichu, and since the Rabbanan also Yusaimech, then therefore the argument goes well. Kadeprecious La'ayel Aliba de Abaye. So therefore, while we explain Abaye at the beginning of the Tosfos, Bishlima Abaye, that's how Rava agrees to all those points. That Bishlima Abaye is how Rava comes out in the Maskana, and therefore that is the halacha in the Maskana, the Bishlima Abaye at the beginning of the Tosfos, the way that we came out there in the whole the Katzat Shalok Hoigin. That's now a svara in Abaye that Rava agrees to, and it's in Rabbi Yossi, so that's the halacha. Therefore, we not dealing with the lokeach. And again, Tosfos said Amar Ravina lokeach when he was above explaining Rashi, and now he's Ela, but they didn't say lokeach in the Gemara, and therefore he's Gerson in his Gemara. No, Ela Amar Ravina. We're not dealing with lokeach Bechlal. Therefore, Devarim came first. Mishum de'im kain lo hayamati Rabbi Yossi lismoch bala Chardel, because Rabbi Yossi wouldn't let him to go first. Gave him the bala Devarim lo asa klal shalok kahoigim, because the bees didn't do anything wrong. But Davka the samach below lokech. Davka we're samach without lokech. Shasa katzat shalok kahoigim. Because if it was a lokeach, then Rabbi Yossi, again, that's the whole problem of why Rav Papa can't say that the bees came first, because I've no way. Once you have a lokeach, I've no way to do the bees first, because Rabbi Yossi would make any sense. And then he tried it without the lokeach, well, that doesn't work either. So here now with Ravina, with the Ela Amar Ravina, we're all good. We don't need a lokeach, and the bees come first. So Baal Devarim Matir Rabbi Yossi leBaal Chardel lismo kedeprecious la'ayel. Lefizeh Atishapir the Maskana zu, and also the Maskana zu lo nitzarech lechalek bein lokeach ha'ilam belokeach mishra. So again, this doichek chiluk which he said above, we don't need. Achi hamtim nami kedei lehavin min misan mashra misham de minei tzarech lachzer mikol shinoi delayel. So why did I left out a Mishnah? I was going through all the Mishnahs in order, and then I skipped a Mishnah and then brought it at the end. Why did I do that? Because that Mishnah at the end is what is going to be the like tiyufta on Rava, that's going to make him change all the previous terutzim. Vatinami shapit demari besomach nami bal devorim techila kamosha mochrach betosefta. And then also that the Tosefta I brought with the Rebbe said was also that the Chardel came first. That also works, and therefore Tosfos answers all of his questions that he's asked. Kasha loy, that's the Re. He starts asking questions and he answers it all up with this Ela Amar Ravina, and therefore Rava falls into Abaye. So basically in halacha we have it's a maklokas rishonim now as to whether you can be samach or not. That the Rashi is saying that Rava says lo samach, except for Giri delay, like Rabbi Yosef, where Tosfos says no, he agrees to Abaye. So we have a maklokas rishonim as to whether you can be Saimech or not based on this Girsa in the Rabbeinu Chananel and the Rabbeinu Tam. So Tosfos, מכלל, Dusver, Rabbi Yossi. Now again, this comes after the other two, because Tosfos starts it off here with Tzarech Loimar, the Perish Zeh. The Perish Zeh is the Perish of Rabbeinu Chananel and Rabbeinu Tam, which we had at the end, which is that it's Ela Amar Ravina. Since it was Ela Amar Ravina, it's clear that Abaye and Rava agree on everything. Since Abaye and Rava agree on everything, now this kasha here, Meklal Dusver, Rabbi Yossi Ela Nizig Laharchik, comes after Ela Amar Ravina. So we had at the beginning of Tosfos, we explained Bishlema la Abaye val kasha la Rava. So since we had Bishlema la Abaye, according to the first kasha, the first makshan had a Bishlema la Abaye, which we explained at length. So therefore, now it's Ela Amar Ravina. Rava folds into what Abaye held, and therefore it's Bishlema la Abaye and Bishlema la Rava. Therefore, there's no cash on anybody here. Like, what are you talking about, Meklal Dusver Rabbi Yossi? There's no cashes here. So Tosfos says, Sarach lefaresh zeh, Sarach loimer lefaresh zeh. According to Rashi, Rava didn't reply. We went through all Rashi's peshat there. It's a different question. Here, according to what we're saying now, Rava agrees to Abaye. Therefore, there's no question. The perish zeh, i.e., to what Rabbeinu Tam and the Rach are saying that Rava agrees to Abaye. Dezeh hamaksha eina oisa shehaksha batchila. So if I can't just, he's not holding because we start off Bishlema la Abaye, and then so the El Amar Ravina, we cut us back to Abaye. There's no kashas. So this makshan has to be, he's holding different havaminas or savaras to the original maksha we had Bishlema la Abaye. Ve'ilo samech hechi mishtachek la. That was the original question we had by the first makshan. Dahalidi day Havenicha leila Abaye. Because according to the first Makshin who asked this question of Ve'ilo sama hechi mishrachik la, tahadidi day hayenicha le. La Abaye, that's how we start off with Nicha la Abaye, Kasha la Rava. Damar Samach. Because Rabbi says Samach, therefore we have no questions here, we have no issues. V'lahave Kasha le midi. And so therefore, what's this kasha? So twice the print. What's this kasha? According to this new territory, this great teretz, Elamar Rava agrees to abide. And again, that's the Rabbi Kiveger says that it's not the Iker Shitas in the Rishonim and the Poiskim, but the Shulchan Aruch brings the Shitas of the Rach and the Rabbeinu Tam. So at least you can say Kimli on the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam going in. Again, Rav is moeded to abide, so it can be Soimech. There's no kashas here. וסבר, there's no kash according to this sheet of Rabbeinu Tam. So the Gemara falls apart. So וסבר Rabbi Yossi al hanizak lachak et atzmo. So v'tzarek lamer, this is what we have to say the kashas. Shehamaksha harishon have a yad shapir hamaskana. So the original maksha understood properly the maskana to devarim lechardel lo maski l'rabanan. So we knew there was that Rabbi Yossi held it was two-way and the Rabbanan held it was one-way. So therefore, our Bishlam Abaye works in the Maskana. Aval Hamaksha Hazel Lo Yada. So he's not holding. He's holding that the Rabbanan are like Rabbi Yossi, that there's two-way mazik. Lahachi Perach Meklal Dsavar Rabbi Yossi. Since Rabbi Yossi holds that, therefore it's ala nizak lahak et atzmo. Lahaksha came into the Rabbanan chashev bal devarim nizak. Since the Rabbanan hold that the bal devarim is now the Rabbanan are holding that it's two-way mazik. And they're still holding that Bal Devarim is Nizak, because again, we're in the Rabbeinu Tam, so therefore we're not dealing with that the Chardal comes first. We're dealing with that the Bal Devarim comes, and also we're rejecting the whole Lokeach thing. So the Bal Devarim go first, and the Chardal has to do the whole Harhaka, so therefore we see that according to the Rabbanan that the Bal Devarim is the Nizak.
This is according to Rashi. Both.
No, we're done. We left Rashi a long time ago. The first two Toysusim are dealing with Rashi. This is dealing with Rabbeinu Tam and Rach. We're not dealing with Rashi Peshat. We're definitely dealing in Rabbeinu Tam's Peshat, and therefore his whole problem is that Bishlam ala Abaye is how we started. And now Rava agrees with the Abaye, therefore everyone's good. So what's the question? So he says that the second Makshan has to have different Havim. He understands differently to the first Makshan. The first Makshan understands that the Rabbanan hold of it's only one-way mazik. But this Makshan thinks it's two-way mazik, and he's comparing the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. And therefore, since to the Rabbanan, that the Balachar Dalu comes second, has to do all the Charchaka, therefore the Baldevoirim, he's called a Nizak. V'lo mazik, so that the Bal Devarim is a nizak lo mazik according to the Rabbanan. In the Havamina that it's a two-way mazik, they mazik each other, and since he came first, he's a nizak. And therefore, to Shurmatrikin, the Balachardel laharchik. Why is the Rabbanan making the Balachardel to be marked? Because he is called the mazik because the other guy went first. Afol gav shehem mazikin lachardel. Even though the bees are mazikin lachardel, he's called the nizak, not the mazik. Mikol Mokam came into Somak beheter lo chashiv mazik. Now again, this heter is the Shalok Kahoigin of the Rebbe Yossi, which we saw before. V'al balachardel laharkik im kain gam le Rebbe Yossi chashev nizak. So this is just like the Rabbanan hold that he's a nizak. So to Rebbe Yossi hold that it's a nizak. So I mean, Tosfos has to do, even though it's quite a nice teretz of his Elamar Ravina, he has to do some gymnastics here to fit everything into the Gemara in order to make sense of it. Ve'afilo hachi motor lismoch. So according to Rabbi Yossi, the bees came first, and he still mutter to go to the Balachardel because the Balachardel, he doesn't have to distance because he can just say, well, you went first and you're a mazik, so I'm going to go right next to you because you didn't distance. Yeah, so the Balachardel is the mazik, and the bees are allowed to be somek to the Balachardel, and the Balachardel is allowed to be the Balachardel because we're learning that the bees are the nizak, and then the chardel is the mazik, and the bees are able to be somak to the chardel. Imkain, so over to ala nizak laharka ketatzmo. So Rabbi Yossi holds that the chardel doesn't have to move because the bees should have moved. because they're just, you're damaging me, I'm damaging you. Therefore the bees should have moved, and therefore, since we allowed since the bees came first, we're like allowing the Chardal B'di'evid to be Soimach, because you should have distanced and you didn't. So therefore, the bees should be chad. They're called the Nizak, just like in the Rabbanan they're called the Nizak. So Tupa Rabbi Yossi, they're the Nizak, and they should have distanced. And Rabbi Yossi is like penalizing them because they didn't. Ihachi, if that's true, that's ala Nizak. Even the Mashar of a Yarek, the Mashar should have been distanced itself from the Yarek. And why is that allowed? Nami came. The ain't svarad the Rabbi Yossi chashev bal devoirim mazik. Afo pish somach beheter. So there's not a svar. We're not saying that Rabbi Yossi holds that the bal devoirim is a mazik. Mishum she'asa katzat shelo kahoigen. So we're not. So we're saying that we don't want to learn out a maklokus like this. That this is what we said before, that Rabbi Yossi is the bal devoirim is a mazik. Because we're saying, again, we're saying that Rabbi Yossi holds that the bees are a nizak, just like the Rabbanan. The alternative way to learn is that Rabbi Yossi holds that the bees are a mazik, and this is what they're arguing about, which is what Toys is going to explain now. That the bees are the mazik, even though they shrunk beheter. Why is he the mazik? Because he did shelo kahoigen. That's what we had before, how we understood it. But the Rabbanan, now that works when Rabbi Yossi holds that they're damaging each other, and the Rabbanan hold that they don't damage each other. Therefore, according to Rabbi Yossi, the bees are a damager. The bees are a mazik, and therefore this is shelo kahoigen. But according to the Rabbanan, the bees are not a mazik. Therefore, there's no shelo kahoigen. So that's how it is in the Maskana. But Toysis is putting this in now and saying that this isn't this. They can't be arguing that we're saying that Rabbi Yossi must hold that the bees are a nizak. And the nizak has to be harkik tatzmo because the bees were there shelo. And don't say that the bees are mazik. Why are they mazik? Because he did shelo kahoigen. The Rabbanan lislahu haisvara. The Rabbanan don't say shelo kahoigen. The ein svara clouds are bahachi. Because what the hell are they arguing about? So if you want to say, because we're saying like this, that the Rabbanan are holding that it's a two-way mazik, and Rabbi Yossi holds it's a two-way mazik. The Rabbanan are holding when the bees go first, they're a nizak, and Rabbi Yossi is holding that when the bees go first, they're a mazik. Like, how did that happen? No, because they did shelo kahoigen. And what the Rabbanan say, no, it is kahoigen. You're doing the right thing, even though the bees are a mazik to the Chardel, that will come. What is this? What is this? A is hitting B, and the Rabbanan hold that A is a nizak, and Rabbi Yossi holds that A is a mazik. I mean, what the hell are they arguing over? And this, so in order to we need to have this shelo kahoigen, because what did the bees do wrong by going first? So he's saying, no, because we know the Chardal is going to come, therefore shelo kahoigen, he should have distanced himself chetzi. So that's a good svara, and we're going to need that in the Maskana. Because again, whatever the Bishlam ala Abaye is at the beginning, that's how we're going to end off in the end. So here in this middle step, which we're going to reject, again, so we have to say they both hold that it's a nizak and not nizak mazik, like in the Maskana. But again, the key issue is that even though we go to that in the Maskana, it's because it's two-way mazik here. This maksh is holding that they both mazik each other. Bein l'Rabbanan, bein Rabbi Yossi. So this is the only way that he can explain the maklokus there. Mashani, this is the Gemara continues. La'olam Rabbi Yossi ala mazik laharka gatatzma svarle. The hashib ala devarim mazik, and therefore now you see here he says we can't say that bal devarim is a mazik. That's in the previous slab because he held that they were holding that again everyone's holding that it's that the bees mazik the chardal mazik the bees. Afagav shesong beheter. Kevin shasa katzat shelo kahoigen. Business factor. So that's how we're holding Rabbi Yossi in the end. The whole mistake, again, we're posting like Rabbi Yossi. The whole mistake is that you know the guy's going to come and you're a mazik and you're not a nice guy, even though but then you can't remove him. For Rabbanan nami have a moidele. The Rabbanan agreed to him b'hach svara. They agreed to the whole katzat kahoigen because he's going. But now in the Maskana, they can argue on this, and they would agree to him on this whole thing, Katzat Shelo Kahoigen, which in the previous one they would have to argue on. No, they agreed to it. If they held that the Devar Mazik Lachardel. However, Lo Maski Lachardel. So since the Devarim don't Mazik, therefore he can say he's on Beheter, the Chardel has to do the whole thing. And Rabbi Yossi is holding that they both mazik each other. Therefore, when you Samech first, you should have known that the guy was going to bring the other mazik, and you should have distanced half. The kach marchik balachardal, the whole thing. Uku miskanazu yesh lefarish techila sugye ledivrei hamaksha deperich. So again, how we're answering this makshin is how we answered Bishlam El Abaye at the first makshin. The ilav samech hechim mishachak la. So this is the first kasha we've had from the makshin. Basically, this is Tosfos' first teretz back in the first, where how he explains in the first Tosfos Bishlam El Abaye is how it comes out. The Bishlam El Samech can explain in hashta. V'lo kamo perish the perish contras. Sheyelku the Rabbanan havi devorim kamo yerek kevin shenismechu beheter. So this whole thing is not as we're explaining with Rashi's pshat, because we have to come out with a completely different pshat with the Rashi and with Rabbeinu Tam's pshat. Afogav de gam hem mazikin lechardel Kushiva, even though that they will damage when it comes. Rabbi Yossi matter l'smoch chardel b'fnei shabal at the verim asa ketzat shalok gohig. Right, so that kasha in the Gemara is not the way that we explain according to Rashi. Now we go to the last Tosfos and the Gilgulei Chardal, which is a different hemaskil coming from earlier. However, seemingly we need a Gemara later on in order to understand what Tosfos is talking about here. So Persia Kontrus Parachim, he holds that it's the leaves, and Ba'orech, he explains that it's the seeds. And both of them don't appear to be a good pshat according to the Ri. Because we say the Rabbanan Devorim Lechardal Lo Mazki. So the Rabbanan give two potentials as to how the bees are not being mazik. If it's because of the seeds, or is it because of the leaf? So it's mashma from the Rabbanans that they did not understand what Rabbi Yossi was talking about. When Rabbi Yossi said that the bees are damaging the chardal, it was not clear to the Rabbanan how they were damaging the chardal. Mahen mazikin. Because they said, because if it's the leaves, if it's the seeds, it can't get there. And if it's the leaf, so then they grow back. So whichever way that Rabbi Yossi is talking about, so therefore it's not a mazik. So therefore they didn't understand what if they knew what Rabbi Yossi was saying the mazik was. So therefore, so according to Rashi, why are they talking about the seeds? And according to Orech, why are they talking about the leaves? The kachem asfikin iba bitna. So that's why they had a suffix. Venera lari the galgalehem anafim. It's actually the branch, and on the branch you have both the leaves and the seed that's on the branch. V'hashta lo perish Rabbi Yossi mahem mazikud. So Rabbi Yossi is saying that the bees are damaging the branch, but obviously not the branch. But what part of the branch? Well, if it's the seed, they can't get it, and if it's the leaf, so then it grows back. It says, yeah, but they eat the leaf. Why is this not a damage? Why are you not calling this a mazik? The flowers are just a little bit. So that the flowers are only there for a small period of time, and therefore, when they kind of remove them for a day or two, it's not enough time for them to actually be mazik them. So it's not a mazik because it's such a short period of time. The flowers are there for a day or two. This is the only flowers that are only there for a day or two. When the bees aren't, when they come to eat it, they're not enough bees to do enough damage in such a short period of time, because after a day or two they fall off, and then the seeds come in their pods.